Welcome to Behavioral Groups. I'm Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. Hey, Kurt, let me ask you something.
Okay.
When was the last time you almost said something to someone, but then didn't?
Well,
Okay, and for this exercise, think about someone as being someone that you didn't know.
Oh, okay. So probably would have happened like in an airport or something, like, right? So a stranger. You want me to know when the last time I had an encounter with a stranger
Yes.
where I thought maybe I could say something, but then I just clammed up. Is that it?
Exactly. That's what I would like you to reflect on.
Okay. So let me think. It has to be like an airport or at a
coffee
store. Or, something like that, right? So
Market.
Okay. All right. No, here it is. We're at a conference for Behavior Shift for the company that we're doing, and we're trying to get these products that we have, these journals, into college bookstores.
Okay.
And it's in Phoenix, and I am flying home from the conference, and I'm waiting in the airport lounge, waiting for the plane to go. And I see a woman across from me with this Camex bag. So I know she was at the conference with me.
Oh, the Camex was the conference.
I didn't meet her, but she was a part of that conference.
Okay.
And I thought I should just go up and talk to her. I should say, how was the conference? How did you do that?
Yeah.
But I don't know if I was too just intimidated. I just I don't know, I didn't do it. Long, short, I
Great.
did not do that, right? So, I don't know, so we didn't say anything.
But you know what the research says behind this.
Oh, God, yes, I know. I think I even thought about that. I swear to God, I think I was in my head, I'm going, oh, shit, what would Nick say about this? He would be giving me a hard time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and just like we could be rationalizing, like, oh, actually, we're practicing like good social awareness, or we're doing a great job.
I was tired. It was,
Exactly.
Do I really want to have a conversation? Yes. I mean, I know all the research. It would anyway.
Yeah. Well, so as you're saying, Nick Epley is our guest in this episode, and he spent years of his life researching this topic at the University of Chicago, where he teaches psychology. So, and his research is conducted in the real world, in airports, on trains, on buses, and coffee shops and grocery stores, basically in everyday life.
Yeah, at our 500th episode reunion session, he did an experiment with our guests there. So, and what Nick finds is kind of astonishing, if you ask me, right? It's when people imagine talking to a stranger, what do they think? They expect it to be awkward, uncomfortable, maybe even unpleasant. They might get mad at you. That's what they think. And what his research finds, though, is that we are consistently wrong about this.
Yeah.
And that we actually have that conversation with a stranger. People report that it's better than expected, and not just a little bit better, Tim. What is it?
It's a lot better.
It's a lot better. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this gap between what we expect and what actually happens is where a lot of missed opportunities lived. Right.
Yeah.
Maybe more importantly, it's also where leadership lives. Because if you think about it, leadership is filled with all these moments where we ask ourselves, oh, do I reach out or do I stay quiet? Should I check in with that person, or I'm just going to assume that they're busy, or should I be really honest with them, or just keep it to myself? That stuff plays out in our heads.
Yeah. And Nick calls this under-sociality. And he says that we undervalue our needs to connect with other people, that we are social creatures. We know that, right?
Yeah.
And by not saying something, it keeps us from being those social creatures that we actually want to be. And this is the one big thing. So if you want to take anything away from our conversation with Nick, it's take this, right? When we suppress that instinct and we we keep quiet and when we suppress that instinct and to keep quiet, right? And we actually do reach out when we connect with others, when they're strangers, even when they're not strangers, when we're just a little bit more open, we're going to walk away from that interaction feeling better than we anticipated.
Yeah. And so, like the way that you frame that, it means that the real risk isn't reaching out. The real risk is not reaching out.
Yes.
Yeah.
The real risk is not reaching out. And that's this piece. And we don't think about that in our mind. We think it's the opposite. And that's what Nick's research points to is no, the real risk is not reaching out. So, and today's conversation is going to be about that gap, the gap between expectations and reality, and what happens when we start closing it.
Yeah, because if we reach out, we might just find out that the world and maybe a whole bunch of people in it are just a lot more welcoming than we think.
Oh, everybody but you, right?
Everybody but me. Yeah.
Or me, maybe. I don't know. I obviously didn't reach out to that woman in the airport, and I even had a connection. Anyway. All right. So listeners, sit back, relax, have a generous pour of abundant sociality and conversation with strangers, and enjoy our conversation with Dr. Nick Epley.
Nick Epley, welcome back to Behavioral Grooves.
Thank you so much. It's great fun to be back here.
Good to hear you. I think the last time we were together was October back in Minneapolis, and it's really fun.
That was a blast.
Yeah,
at a bar, right? At a bar, we were trying to do
in
signs
person,
with a
having
beer.
Conversations. Yes,
with 100 of our closest friends.
Talking about the last time they cried in front of another person.
Yeah,
that was great fun.
Hey, I will tell you, my daughter still is talking about that.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
is that right?
There you go.
I don't remember if she actually had the conversation. Did she? She was in the back.
She did. She was having the conversation. You actually put her with another person and made that happen. But yes, it happened, and it's interesting. So
good news.
Okay, speed round. Question 1.
Yeah.
Ready?
Bring
if
it.
you had to live a year without a laptop or without a mobile phone, which would you choose?
Mobile phone.
You'd live without the mobile phone?
I prefer to live a year without a mobile phone. How do I pay for that?
Yeah, can I pay somebody so I don't have to do that?
Yeah, I get work done on my laptop. I waste my life away on my phone.
We actually talked to Danny Opperman at CMU. Actually did this. He and his wife, they had a sabbatical in the UK. They dropped their phones, and it was like life was great. Great. There's evidence that it can work.
Yeah, I keep mine in my bag, not in my pocket. That's my move.
It's a smart move.
That's a pro move. Yeah.
Very smart move. All right, second of our speed round questions here. If you had the choice to live in a 35-year-old body with a 95-year-old mind, or live in a 95-year-old body with a 35-year-old mind, do you have a preference?
Physical decline is much worse than cognitive decline, so I'd take Danny Kahneman's 95-year-old mind.
Yeah.
In Brad Pitt's 35-year-old body. That's what I think. I mean, if we're going, if we're purely hypothetical, that's what I would do.
And I love the two people that you chose there too. Like really good examples of what we want. I love it.
I didn't know the rules allowed a mix and match on that.
Oh, well, are there rules in this, Tim? Come on, there are no rules in this. We do whatever we want. Yeah.
That's true. Okay, third speed round question. If you're a contestant on The Voice and you're getting interest from 2 or more coaches, is it more likely you'll choose the coach that you connect with the most, or the coach that you have the most connection with their experience the most?
Who you have the most connection with, or
most connection with, or the most experience
and connected to versus their
the most connected. Even if the one that has more experience in your genre is standing right there saying, "I want to work with you."
Yeah. If you're a country singer and the rapper thinks you're fabulous, you're going with the rapper.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that more.
We got the numbers on that one.
Yeah. The last of these speed round questions here. Is Bill Nye the Science Guy right when he says everyone you will ever meet knows something you don't, but we don't learn what others have to teach us if we keep to ourselves?
He's absolutely right on that. He's
Yes.
absolutely. Everybody's got a story to tell you. Your job in conversation is to figure it out, and people often don't take that opportunity that they have. Bill Nye is a smart guy.
He is a smart
That he
guy,
is.
very much so. We are talking with Nicholas Epley about his new book, A Little Social, at least that's the U.S. title.
A little more social, yes.
A Little
Little
More
More
Social is the U.S. title. Hello being the British title, UK title. So just for the sake of our listeners
For our
overseas.
British listeners, who we have quite a few.
Yes. The opening line in the preface is something about this fabulous paradox of being human. And the three of us have talked about this in the past. But we have this natural born desire, need to connect with others, and a tremendous reluctance to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that. What's the source of that issue? What's the source of that paradox?
Well, so the paradox itself is something that anyone who walks around in the world for any amount of time will see multiple times a day, right? Walk down the sidewalk, you see friendly people walking by each other, never saying anything to each other. And yet you know that when you're talking to a friend, you're happier than when you're not. You sit down in a waiting room somewhere and you got a bunch of people sitting there saying nothing to each other when they could engage with each other. You've got a kind thought that you could share with somebody else, that you'd feel better about, giving somebody a compliment on or expressing your gratitude, and yet people are nervous and hold it back. You got an easy, kind thing you could do for someone, and you're reluctant to do it. The eureka moment for me on this was one day riding the train into the University of Chicago, where I work as a behavioral scientist, sitting in a seat, which I'd done day after day after day for several years now, and suddenly looking around and notice that you've got all these highly social animals. We're the most social primate on the planet. We're made happier and healthier when we connect with each other, and yet here we all were, totally ignoring each other. Right? That's crazy. Well, I don't know if it's crazy. I didn't know then if it was crazy. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Right. Okay, so we have this. We are this big social primates, and yet we're not engaging socially.
We're often choosing not to.
We're choosing not to. Okay, so your book starts with a section on why. Why are we not doing it?
Yeah, the reason I think the main reason is that we underestimate how positively other people will respond to us when we reach out. So let's go to my trains. My train coming into the University of Chicago here, we did run some experiments on the trains and buses and cabs here in Chicago. And what we consistently found was that people essentially didn't think others wanted to talk to them. People were in a situation that psychologists refer to as pluralistic ignorance. So a majority of people said that they would be happy to talk to somebody else, but they thought a minority of people would want to talk to them. Right? And it's hard for me to tell. You and I are walking around, you're not talking to me, right? I assume you maybe aren't interested in talking to me, and that makes me reluctant to reach out to you. But what we find is that people really underestimate the power that they have to reach out and engage with other people in ways that will encourage them to respond positively back. Another person might not say hi to you, but if you say hi to them first, what are they going to do, right? Like 98% will say hi to you back, right? If you want people to be friendlier to you, say hello to them first. Nobody waves, everybody waves back. But we miss that. We misunderstand the power that we have to connect with other people when we reach out to them. And it starts from thinking, other people don't want to be bothered. They won't respond well if I reach out to them. And we're just wrong about that.
So the I love your hat should be in the Conversation Starters Hall of Fame, right? I love your hat.
Yeah. So that was the eureka moment. I mean, I'm eternally grateful to this woman who I talked with on a train ride on the way in one morning, where I had this kind of eureka moment. I was writing my last book, Mindwise, in this chapter describing how social we are, how we have brains uniquely equipped with connecting with the minds of others, how we're made happier and healthier when we connect with the minds of others. And yet here we all were not doing any of it. And that particular morning, I put people in experiments for a living, but that morning I decided to put myself in one. And I had a woman come sit down next to me, mid-50s. I would say I was probably 35-ish at the time. Brad Pitt style body, Danny
of course,
style
Danny
brain.
Kahneman
It's
mind.
still the Danny Kahneman brain. Yeah.
We've already decided. Anyway, she sits down next to me. She's got this fabulous red hat, this big wide red brim on it. And I decided I'm going to try to do something different. Let me see what happens if I just try to have a conversation with her. And so the first thing I said was, I love your hat. I have one just like it. And that is not the conversation starter of Hall of Fame, right? But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. What was shocking to me in that moment, and this was more stuff I've reflected on afterwards, but it's almost like when you reach out to engage with somebody in a moment like that, their face can change so much that they almost look like a different person.
Wow.
That they go from having like a dead face. It turns out people's resting bitch face is pretty bitchy. It turns out it's not very positive. But when you reach out to engage with them, it's like you're flipping a switch on their back often, right? She turned and smiled to me, just totally lit up, kind of laughed along with me for a minute. It turns out people don't laugh at things that are funny. Mostly what we laugh at are attempts to connect with other people. So she was connecting with me. And then the conversation, I had all these fears about engaging with her beforehand. Maybe she'd think I was a creep trying to hit on her or something, or we'd have nothing to talk about, or whatever. All these bars that get up in front of us in our minds that keep us from reaching out to engage with other people. It's like a little prison we keep ourselves in. And once I actually engaged, those bars just kind of fell away. She'd say something, I'd think about something similar, would carry on to the next topic, right? And it just flowed really, really easily. And the thing I remember that I was so struck with, it was really a eureka moment. When I'm getting up to leave, she says, "Thank you so much for talking with me today." Mm-hmm. And I don't think she was BSing me. I mean, we both, I think that was just nice. That 30-minute ride. I mean, look, that's not going to change our lives.
No. Well,
but that 30
it changed
minutes,
yours.
Well, it's okay. That one changed mine. Fair enough. It changed my character and it changed my career all at once. But most conversations don't do that. That was a powerhouse for me because it had all these downstream consequences. Sometimes it can. By the way, I've talked to lots of people who met their spouse on a plane trip. A shocking number of people.
Wow.
So it can, but that anyway. It made that 30-minute commute, which would otherwise have been dull, better. And then it just seemed dumb. If I could do that, why wouldn't I do that more often? And I was struck. What really struck me, and this is really the driving force behind our research, wasn't just that the conversation was positive. It was that it was surprisingly positive. What I was struck by was this gap between my pessimistic beliefs that were keeping me from reaching out to begin with, engaging with another person, using my social brain for what it's good for, and the positive experience that I actually had from actually connecting with another person.
And Nick, that's not just your experience. This is what you find in the research that you're doing, is those expectations versus reality, they don't line up. Is that right?
Right. So, I mean, anecdotes are fun and they're interesting, but I'm weird in all sorts of ways, right? Kahneman mind, Brad Pitt brain. We've already established that. Right? I'm weird in all sorts of ways and different. And so as researchers, as scientists, it is often the case that our observations of the world and our experience in it are often triggers for hypotheses. We kind of look around in the world for the what the hell are we doing kinds of moments, and then try to figure that out. That is grist for our empirical mill. But just a single case that's not evidence. That's just an anecdote. And so to actually get some evidence, we had to run experiments, do the thing we do as scientists to see if this is a replicable, robust, reliable sort of pattern. So the very first experiment we did now, pushing probably 15 years ago, because this was just the tip. This was a tip of what became a massive iceberg for us in our research. Was we went to the trains that I ride every day, just to the station just north of us. We live in Flossmoor, Illinois, on the south side of Chicago, and we went to the Homewood, Illinois train station, which is just north of us. And we ran an experiment there where we ran two experiments there is the way to think of it. In one experiment, we recruited people, gave them a survey on their commuting experience and asked them to imagine, how would you feel if on this commute today, we asked you to just enjoy your solitude today? And they reported how positive it would be, kept to themselves, enjoyed how positive it would be, how sad they would, how happy they would feel, how sad they would feel, how pleasant it would be compared to normal. That's one. We asked them to imagine how you would feel if you just did whatever you normally did, which is mostly keep to themselves, or how you would feel if you actually tried to connect with another person in conversation, what I did with the woman in the red hat. And the results there were crystal clear. People thought talking to the person sitting next to them would suck. Like, no, I would rather not do that. That's like fondling a bag of pus. I just don't know. No, thank you. I'll use my phone instead, please. And so instead they thought keeping to themselves would be the best. So those are people's beliefs, right? That's like that's one bar. Okay. In this, that's the expectation bar. We then ran another experiment where we recruited people and actually had them do these three things to test whether those beliefs that people held were calibrated with reality. So we actually had them try to make a connection with the person sitting next to them, try to have a conversation, to do whatever they normally did, or to enjoy their solitude. And at the end of their commute, they actually reported having the most positive experience when they talked to the person sitting next to them, and the least positive experience when they kept to themselves and enjoyed their solitude. So it wasn't just that people's expectations were wrong. They were precisely backwards.
Yeah.
Right? But in a way that allows you to understand their behavior. If I think that, reaching out to you, Kurt, to talking would be unpleasant, I wouldn't do it. And of course, I'd never find out that I was wrong about that if I don't try it, right? And so that suggested, that was the first piece of evidence that we had that suggested I might not be crazy, right? That this might not just be something
that you actually did have Danny Kahneman brain, and you were, it was
and Brad Pitt's body.
There you go.
This was, So we, and then you start to ask questions. Well, okay, what if we go somewhere else? Like, what if we go to another kind of dead space, like a gray space where people could engage with each other, but instead they're choosing to do nothing. So we went to the buses in Chicago. If you think there are weirdos on the trains in Chicago, you should try riding the bus, right? There are weirdos there. But even on the buses, they actually took a bus into our lab. So we got better response rates out of this, almost perfect response rates. We found the same pattern there.
Well, what do you mean by perfect response rates?
So in the trains, we had people fill out surveys. So this is the old days. Now we do this on phones, and people fill out the survey online in real time. But on the trains, we put people on the train and then we let them go.
Yeah.
And like our captive participants were out in the wild now.
Bye.
We don't have them in the lab anymore. So we needed to hear back from them. And when you run a field experiment like that, not everybody responds to you. So we had about 85% of people get back to us. So we gave them a survey that they dropped in the mail back to us, a stamp. Now they just, again, do it on their phones. But we had about 85% of people get back to us. And you'd worry about that as a researcher, particularly if the response rates were differing across conditions. Maybe people were more likely to respond in one condition than another. People maybe who had terrible experiences weren't filling out the survey and writing it back, whatever, right? You'd worry about that kind of selective sampling. But still, we had good response rates, about 85% and equal in each condition. So that was good. Nevertheless, when we went and did it on the buses, we had people commute into our lab. And so we had a lab downtown, and we had people leave their homes, ride on the bus. We called them before they left. We gave them instructions about what to do on the bus. When they got to the lab, we had them fill it out. And virtually everybody who started, well, certainly everybody who went through the bus and arrived at the lab filled out the survey. And nearly everybody who started the bus trip also came into the lab. So we had near perfect response rates there, which gives us a little more faith in the results that we're hearing from everybody who participated in it.
Yeah, it is kind of cool, though. You didn't bring people into a lab and sit them down and say, let's pretend that you're going to do this. And this is a classic field experiment. You're literally out in the bus stations, in the train stations, asking these people. It is their actual experience. What we did in Minneapolis, when you walked 100 plus people in that bar through this. They all did it. They did it right there in front of us.
Yep.
and we got to see them have these interactions.
It's real. Yeah, no, it's real. I mean, it is hard to do that kind of research in some ways. I have the good fortune of being at a university that supports research well, so I have good resources to do that. But it's hard. It takes a while, but it's also the most interesting. I mean, these are real. At least I think they're interesting. They're real. They're not people's imagination only. They're people's actual experience, and you can see it. Like, I mean, when we did it together in October, with people having deep conversations with another person, you kind of don't need the surveys, right?
Yeah.
To know this is a good experience.
You can see it on their faces.
Quiet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You had to stop those conversations because they were going. And the number of people that I know, like, again, hundreds of people, lots of our friends, but they didn't know each other. So
Right.
they were talking with people they did not know. And the connections that were made from that, I'm still talking with people today going, I met this person and we're now, like, we've gone out to coffee a couple times
right?
and different
Yeah.
pieces just
Yeah.
from that 15 minutes of interaction that we forced upon them. You talk in the book about this concept of under-sociality. Can you explain what that is for our listeners and why is it a problem? And I know you started to go into why connections are important, as you talked about that as you were looking at that from Windwise, your last book, but maybe get into some of that as well.
Yeah, so let's start with why sociality turns out to be important. It is essential for our happiness and our health. Spending a day alone is comparable to the feeling that you have when you spend a day with a headache, right? It's unpleasant. Where you spend a whole day alone, it feels bad. Over time, you aggregate those things up over time, and it turns out that being alone chronically is a physiological stressor. It compromises your immune system functioning. It compromises your cardiovascular functioning, makes you therefore more susceptible to catch all kinds of illnesses, which means that being lonely is a severe risk factor both for morbidity, bad health, and for mortality, dying sooner. Morbidity or mortality risks that are comparable to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, right? It's big. We are social creatures. When we're connecting with others, our body is telling us, yes, do more of this. This is great. Let's please continue with this. I've got a friend. This is nice. I'm learning things. And when we're alone, our body is on high alert, telling us we got to stop doing this, reach out and engage with other people. This isn't very nice. And so there's that sociality. That's why it's important for us. And yet, if we're pessimistic about how social interactions will actually turn out, we might not do the things that actually create those social connections. We might not talk to the woman who sits down next to us in the red hat and have that uplifting 30-minute period. We might not do little things like, on my way into the office, I've picked up a habit of saying hello to people as I come in. I know basically everybody in the building now because I say hello to them all the time. But that little walk in is uplifting in some ways. We won't do those things in our relationships. We might not be open and honest with people. And so we keep our true selves to ourselves in ways that make our relationships weaker, as we saw in the bar that evening, right? When we had all of your friends come together who kind of knew each other but didn't really know each other, right? They proved Bill Nye's point. When we actually gave them questions that encouraged them to learn something meaningful about these folks, they learned stuff they never would have guessed.
Yeah.
Right? You actually, you killed a lot of strangers that night is what we did, right? We turned a lot of strangers, people who didn't know each other, into acquaintances, or acquaintances into better friends.
Yeah.
Right? Because you went a little beyond. But if you're reluctant, if you're nervous about how those interactions are going to go, you might not make the choice to engage in those interactions and therefore might not be social enough for your own good. And that's the way in which we use this term under-sociality. We're not social enough, I think, for our own good in lots of ways.
Are we in a crisis of under-sociality? Is that overstating it? I'm just curious. How bad is it from your perspective?
So whenever I see people doing things that I know aren't, so I taught a class yesterday here at Booth, right? I teach a class called Designing a Good Life. It's an ethics and happiness class. And one of the demonstrations we did yesterday required people, in order to make money for themselves, required them to trust another person.
Mm.
When you trust another person, they tend to trust you back, right? So people had $10. They had to decide how much to give to another person. The other person then had that amount tripled, and then they could choose to give some back, okay? Many of my students, I would say most of my students, didn't trust their fellow students. And so they didn't transfer much money over, and they didn't get much money back. But some of our students really did trust. They gave all of their money away, and in return got a lot more money back, felt better about it. In fact, one of the students who we randomly selected as the winner gave back more than he was given up front, benefiting the other person more because he so appreciated being trusted. Okay. And when I see instances like that, so that's in my classroom, I can see the data and I can see the cost of that. It feels like a tragedy to me.
Yeah.
You could have been kinder to another person and you chose not to, and that hurt yourself and them at the same time. You could have had this nice conversation to a person sitting next to you and you chose not to, and that moment was worse. That feels like a lost opportunity. Tragedy may be too big, but you scale this up over the course of somebody's life if we're doing this chronically. You just live a much worse life than you could have, and a worse life for everybody around you. You scale this up right now in the US, arguably more divided than we've ever been, falsely divided in many ways, because we don't engage with each other. We don't talk with each other. We don't connect with each other. And so are we at a crisis moment? When I see people interacting with other human beings who are decent, I think at their core, by and large, not all, but are more decent than we might imagine, choosing to do things that stoke division, disconnection, unhappiness, incivility, yeah, that feels like a tragedy to me. And I would, and it's a false crisis. I don't know how to solve this problem at the collective level. I don't know how to make people be wiser with each other at the societal level, but I do think I have a good sense about how to do it for you at the individual level.
Which actually brings me to my next question, because we've talked for years now about this. I've read your work. I understand the value of what you're saying. I know that it would be demonstrably better for me to have a conversation with the person sitting next to me, or attempting to have a conversation with the person sitting next to me on the airplane ride that I just took back 2 nights ago. And yet I don't. Not always. I do more than I did before, but it is not a every single time thing. Why is that so difficult for me? Even if I understand, I believe it's not that my expectation is, no, I know that the research says this will be better. I believe that, yet I still don't do it. I mean, and maybe it's just me because I'm an idiot, but
Bing, 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 bing. We have a winner.
All right. I know what the little visual is going to be now on this when we get this done. But anyway, I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, look, I hear that all the time. Right. And part of it is, I don't think the way, so I don't think our data suggests you should talk to everybody every time. They don't. Okay. You got stuff to do, right? I mean, life's a series of choices that you got to make about how to spend your time. Our data just suggests that one of these things that guide our decisions, one of the pieces of our decision making is off, but not necessarily all of them. You got to work on, you got to get a podcast interview ready to go. You got to write on the book you guys are working on. You got stuff to do. Or this person might seem particularly busy or mean or whatever. So you have that stuff going on too. Our data suggests that you're off by a bit.
Okay.
And if you correct a bit, you'll be a little more social. And I think that's what our data suggests. You'll take opportunities to engage with other people that you might not have before. And I think that's the margin that you have for improvement. Now, I do think if you practice this more, you will become better at it. It'll become a habit. And you'll develop more skill. And then you'll engage with other people when you got a chance far more often.
I want to dig into something that you just said, because it reminded me again of, so I was just down in Nashville. I was down there for work doing this thing. with clients, they have a big social thing at night. So I'm going down to the bar to eat my dinner, sitting at the bar. And with everything that's going on in Minnesota right now, there's a lot of, Tim and I have done a couple different episodes on it. And there's this tension of different opinions on things. Wonderful couple comes, by the way, in Nashville right now, CattleCon is going on. Biggest cattle convention that, lots of big cowboy hats and cowboy boots and different things.
Yeah.
So wonderful woman and gentleman come sit next to me, older than me, probably in their 60s. He's wearing a big cowboy hat, his big mustache coming down. She's this just wonderful little, they asked me about my food and like, what are you eating? And we're sharing this wonderful conversation. And I'm going, it's the steak and it has truffles, but it's not too heavy. So it's really good. She's, I'm going to try this Wagyu burger because we have a calf that's half Wagyu. His name is Philip. We're still going to eat him, but I'm going to try it here. So having this whole wonderful conversation, which is just exactly like you talk about. And then they're going, I asked them, where are you from? And they said, Missouri. And they go, where are you from? And I go, Minnesota. And then it was like, they go, Minnesota. We've talked to people like our friends from there. And I shut down. Because I made an assumption about where their political leaning was and my political leaning and the interpretation of this. And I was just like, I don't have the energy right now to have this conversation that was going on in my head.
Sure.
Was that, given what you were just saying, is that something that you think is appropriate, or should I have maybe tried? And again, I've told myself I want to have these conversations because I want people to understand the lived experience that I have of being in Minneapolis. And I want them to see that and to realize that. But I walked away from that.
Yeah. I think the way to think about that particular situation is that you weren't totally honest with them.
No.
And I think that might have been, you weren't totally open with them. And I think you might be very surprised by how well that would go. Even if they disagreed with you politically, at least we find in conversations when people are open and honest with folks who disagreed with them, they tend to find a lot more in common than they'd imagine. Often when people disagree about something, it's not that one person sees this one way and the other person sees exactly the same thing totally differently. It's often they're looking at different sides of an issue. Most of the complicated issues out there in the world is not a piece of paper. They're like 20-sided dice.
Yeah.
And you're looking at it in slightly different ways, on slightly different angle. And when you learn what somebody else's perspective on the situation is, you often learn something, right? Everyone you ever meet knows something that you don't, Kurt, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Bill Nye.
And also everyone you meet also values openness and honesty, a sense of authenticity. So if you had just said, I live in Minneapolis and we are going through a really hard time right now, and I'm just feeling so exhausted about it, I'm not sure I can talk about it now.
Yeah.
You had just been honest, right?
Yeah.
You had filtered yourself based on some assumptions. And that is the part that maybe I would suggest to you would be worth thinking about overcoming in the future. I've been in the...
This is why I love talking with you. This is just perfect. This is like perfect. Anyway. Yeah.
You don't have to guess what's in their mind, because those guesses are often likely to be wrong, particularly when you're across political divides. You tend to think they're probably more extreme. And I think you would have been really surprised at how similarly they would have seen the situation from you, and also how much they would have been willing to learn if you had felt comfortable, or you had just, you just had invited them in to a conversation. Even just by saying, look, I'm so tired about that. They might have said, it looks really hard. I'm sorry you're feeling that way.
Yeah.
Maybe they would have followed up with, do you have any personal experience with this? Can you, I don't know what they would have said.
Yeah.
But it probably wouldn't have been, you suck,
yeah.
right? Old-bodied man with a Brad Pitt mind, right? They probably wouldn't have done that. I tell this story in the book. I had a situation like yours. that was one of the best conversations about politics I've had across this kind of political divide. It's the kind of conversation we often don't have. I had it with a guy carrying a gun.
Yeah.
At the end of my driveway. I was up in Wisconsin. This was the fall of 2020, right? The election, just before the election, and we had Biden signs out in front of the house, and somebody had run him over the day before, driven down to the ditch and run him over, and then stolen them the next day. Right? They weren't offensive signs, they're just and so I just called up the sheriff, and I thought, you might just want to know this is going on. And he said, well, it turns out I'm just up the road from you. I'm just up the hill. So he comes down. We were there during COVID is when this was. He comes down and is in the sheriff's car, parks at the end of the driveway, comes out. He's cop, so he's fully armed. He's got an AR-15 in the back of the car. And we walk over, I show him where it is. And he says, it's really interesting. These are the first Biden signs I've seen vandalized. We see a lot of Trump signs vandalized.
Oh,
I didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone you meet knows something you don't, right?
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Yeah.
And then he turned to me and he said, what is it about Trump you don't like? Right? And knowing what I do about conversation, he was open, I could tell, to this, right? I'd taken that signal, open to having a conversation. And so we did. We went there. We spent an hour and 15 minutes at the end of my driveway.
wow.
My wife, I get back to the house. She was like at the point, I'm about ready to call the sheriff to find out where you were wrong. Yeah, while you were talking to the sheriff, right? No, it was like an hour and 15-minute conversation. I learned another part of the 20-sided dice from talking to him that I never understood before. So this was after the George Floyd protests during COVID, and he was saying, I got into this job because I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And now, we see something happen. We're worried about pulling people over on the side of the road, stopping somebody who's in a car without a license or whatever, because I'm worried about, people coming down and surrounding the car, because, they're worried about doing my job here.
Yeah.
Like it was we have family who've been in law enforcement. I've seen the toll it can take on you. And I got a different perspective on this than I'd have thought before. He got a different perspective on this from me. He said, I'm always interested in talking to people. He was open in talking to me. And we had a good conversation, right? In fact, we had the kind of conversation that you ought to have with your family members who you love and who think things differently than you do. But often we're not good in those conversations. Here, we were open. We were willing to have the conversation. I would listen. He would listen. We didn't have our phones out for our social media followers or any of that nonsense. And it was fabulous. It was fabulous. Next day I call up the sheriff's office and I make sure to tell them just how much I appreciated him coming by.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I don't know where your conversation would have gone, Kurt, but my bet is you'd have left feeling better if you had gotten.
Well, I'm reminiscing or thinking about this in retrospect, going, why didn't I? I think I should have, all of these different pieces. And I think the way that you just position that is a really nice way for people who are in this situation. Because a lot of my friends are, who are my neighbors are in situations like this where we are exhausted, we are tired, and maybe we don't want to have those conversations with people, family members or high school buddies or whatever it is. But maybe it's that honesty part of, hey, we're going through a lot, I'm exhausted. And maybe it is just being honest with that. And that can help in moving these forward and at least having the opportunity to share and to get, as you said, that 20-sided dice, I think is a fantastic element. Because even in, some of the stuff that Tim and I have done, we put some posts out there and we're getting responses back that are like all over the board, and lots of it's bots and lots of it's different things on social media, which is a whole different thing we can go into at some point too. But one of those is like, where are people focusing their fear? Right. And there's a different perspective, a lens of people like, I'm saving people from being raped and murdered to I'm saving people from being abused and detained unlawfully.
Yes. And when you do that, right, it's both of you have good intent. You're viewing it from a different side of the dice, and that.
Yeah.
So.
Hey Groovers, we want to take a moment away from our conversation to thank you for listening to Behavioral Grooves. If you enjoy the conversations we're having and want to help us keep the groove going, here are a few simple ways that you can support the show.
First off, subscribing to our Substack is a great way to stay connected with us between episodes. The weekly newsletter provides you with cool insights that are beyond the episodes, and they get delivered straight to your inbox.
And if you haven't already, leaving a review or a rating of the podcast on a platform like Apple or Spotify or YouTube helps other curious minds discover us. And there's two great things about that. One, it gives us a boost, and two, it costs nothing.
And it only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference for us. Plus, we love hearing from you, so don't be shy. Leave us a review or give us a quick thumbs up.
We're coming up on 500 episodes, and we're doing this because we love the conversations we have with our guests.
Yeah, we also want to do it because we love bringing you insightful, behavior-changing content every week, and we hope that some of those insights will help you find your groove.
Pull us back in, Tim.
Joining us here on Behavioral Grooves is Dr. Nick Epley. We're talking about his new book, U.S. title, Little More Social, UK title, Hello. Loving that. And I want to just switch themes just a little bit. I'm curious about the distribution curve on this. If we go 2 standard deviations away from the mean, is there somebody who's going to go through your experiment and say, you know, Dr. Epley, that's a bunch of bullshit. I am not happy. I did not like talking to that person. I learned nothing. I'm never going to do this again.
So any one-off conversation, I mean, we have bad conversations. The woman in the red hat didn't have to have responded to me, but 95% of the time they will. And what we find in our research, if you actually look at the distribution, what you see is that there's a lot more variability in people's beliefs about how these social interactions will unfold than there is in people's actual experiences. And that's massive. And that's important for personality, for instance. So there's a strong belief that people differ in how much they enjoy social interaction, engaging with other people. That's called extroversion, right? That's that dimension. What we find in our research, though, is that extroversion and introversion mostly describes people's beliefs about social interaction, their expectations, much more than it describes their actual experiences. The way to think about personality is that they're your habits. It's not who you are. It's who you've kind of trained yourself to be over time. And habits are governed by the choices that you make. That's what it's choices. So introverts think they're not going to like social interaction. They choose not to have them. But when we actually ask them to have them, we find that they enjoy it just as much as an extrovert would. And so there's this big spread on people's beliefs about this, and those beliefs guide people's behavior, right?
Yeah.
Notice if you're nervous about social interaction, if you're more introverted, you think of yourself that way, you're not going to have that conversation. You won't find out that you could be wrong. I wouldn't have had that conversation with the lady in the red hat, the cop at the end of my driveway, and found out that the fear I had was mistaken. I would have carried that with me. And it would have affected my next interaction, my next, and I would have become introverted. But when we actually look at people's experiences, there's not a ton of variability around it, right? So people's expectations on a scale of how much you'll enjoy it, say, go from 0 to 10, right? We give people a scale like that. People fill out every response option in their expectations from 0 to 10. People's experiences generally range from about 7 to 10. So the people who are most mistaken are the people who go into it most pessimistic to begin with.
Right.
Yeah. Huge. The gap is crazy big. There is a little insight. I mean, people who go in thinking they're going to enjoy it as 0 do like it a little less, enjoy it a little less than people who go in thinking it's going to be a 10.
Yeah.
The difference in expectations is more like a 7.5 to an 8.5, not from 0 to 10.
Okay, tell us about Maslow. I learned about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs probably in high school. It was like, man, that pyramid.
It's
like
it is.
This is gospel.
Yeah.
All right.
Social connection is not in the bottom. You need food first. And
Got to have food, got to have
security.
shelter.
Yeah.
And then if you're lucky, you get to self-actualization.
Yeah, right. Autonomy, meaning, purpose.
Way up there in the the clouds, if you can possibly imagine self-actualization, if you could ever get there.
Yep.
All right. What did Maslow get wrong?
Pretty much everything. He got let me back off.
Yeah.
So Maslow was a great human being. He was a wonderful man. So the note, right? This is a great intuitive idea,
right?
And he got our intuitions exactly right.
Wow.
That's how we tend to think about motivation, right? That they're kind of basic needs, and when you're hungry, you can only think about food. You can't think about anything else. And self-actualization, this sense of meaning and purpose, right? Wanting meaning and purpose is something you can only have if you have these other basic needs. And social connection, belongingness, he put in the middle of this hierarchy. He believed it operated in a stepwise fashion. And that turns out to be how people think about other people. It just isn't how their own motives operate. So what's interesting about Maslow is it makes a lot of intuitive sense. You can describe it. Everybody goes, oh yeah, that seems right.
Mm-hmm.
But he proposed this in the 1950s, but when psychologists actually started testing whether motivation, right, whether their desire for meaning and purpose in their life was related to their, need for security, right? If they felt safe and secure, then they could care about meaning and purpose. Or could people who cared about safety and security or food also care about meaning and purpose? They found that there was not this hydraulic relationship. It's more like a box of needs. Right? Yeah. There are a whole bunch of needs that are in there that are important for us, and we can care about them at the same time. And when psychologists started testing these after Maslow proposed it, they found evidence that just wasn't consistent with it. And they kept finding it. 1974, a meta-analysis was published of all the data collected at that time that said there's only one problem with Maslow's hierarchy. The data don't seem to support it.
It's wrong.
1974, that was the year I was born, right? And yet it still shows up in intro psych textbooks. And, when you think about it more carefully, and we found this in our own research, that people actually, that Maslow's hierarchy is a little dehumanizing. Because people tend to think that folks who are lower on the socioeconomic totem pole, for instance, are also kind of lesser human beings.
Yeah.
They're more animalistic. Animals have those basic needs, right? Food, security. But humans are the ones who have the top. But people tend to think folks who are lower in socioeconomic status don't have those higher order needs. They don't really care about belonging. They need food.
Because they have to fight for that food. That's like it's a struggle. So that's where their focus is, and they don't have time or energy to go. Yeah.
But it turns out they need love too.
Yeah.
And it turns out if you want to make a poor person happier, giving them some meaning and purpose in their life goes an awful long ways. Yeah. Right? We all need the house. Yes, that's true. But it's just flat out dehumanizing to think about people in terms of this Maslow's period. This Maslow's pyramid. So not only is that inconsistent with the data, people care about all of these things. A person who's hungry also cares that their life is meaningless. In fact, that's what they would take their own life for.
Yeah.
Right? Wow. Is feeling that it's not meaningful. So not only is it inconsistent with the data, but thinking this way, I think, is dehumanizing. So, we think folks who are poor, what all they need is food. So we'll give them a lot of nice, we'll give them food and things like that. What they need is a job that's got some purpose to it, too. And so when I talk about this in class, I often put up the Maslow hierarchy with a toilet flush in the background for how they ought to think about it. Let's just take a moment to expunge this from our minds. Maybe you can add that to the podcast. That'll right, Matt? Yeah.
We've got a fantastic effects department. So yeah.
It's called Kurt on the plane ride home.
No, you don't want me to be doing the effects. That would be that'd be my voiceover here. Nick, have you ever watched the TV show Alone? Have you seen it, or do you know what it is?
Alone.
It's called Alone. Yeah.
No, I've not.
So let me tell you the premise of this, and I'll for our listeners too who haven't. So Alone is this show basically it takes 10 people, all kind of these survivalist people, puts them out into the wilderness to live alone off of the land. They get like 10 things that they can bring with them, a tarp and, fishing hooks and different pieces of this.
And they're all separate. This is not a community.
They're all separate. They're all apart.
Hence
So they have
name,
their video
alone.
cameras that they have to self-record. So they're recording themselves doing all the stuff every day, but they're not talking to people. And they're out in the wilderness alone. And they don't know how the other people are doing. And they're not saying, oh, 3 of them have left, right? And the idea is the person who lasts longest wins $500K. And what I find interesting, because it's a psychological show for, I think you would love it from the psychology part of it, but is that you would assume that the best survivalist would win. It's the person who has the most fish and food and has the shelter that keeps them warm. And like one guy was creating games to keep himself occupied. He was like carving, dice and doing all sorts of things because he had enough food and everything. That's usually not the case. Usually the person, those people, like, no, they're like, I miss my family. I miss people. I miss my friends, whatever that would be.
Yeah.
And it's the ones who can weather that storm of loneliness that kind of outlast that. Given that, does that surprise you? And then B, should this show be banned because it's psychological torture?
Well, people are entering into it voluntarily, not knowing the harm that's going to befall them. But what I think is probably interesting about what would be interesting about that, from my perspective, would be to look at people's beliefs about who's going to survive. I'm sure they think it's the guy who knows how to make a tent out of grass and leaves, right?
Yeah.
Not the one who can, keep their minds entertained by writing notes to their loved ones and feel connected even when they're isolated. Or maybe the ones who have some religious faith that allows them to feel connected at a time when otherwise they're alone. I'm sure people would underestimate that part. That's super interesting. I spend a lot of time outdoors myself. I grew up in rural Iowa. All my extended family are farmers. I love spending time in the woods. It's not that I don't enjoy my solitude. I do. I'm very engaged. I spend a lot of time hunting and fishing, do conservation work on land we own. I love being alone, but I also know that I love being out in the woods with my kids even more.
Yeah.
And I take it in small bits.
I always talk in a lot of the business work we do, and people, and this idea of the American cowboy who's a lone ranger out there and different pieces. And I always tell them, I go, that's fantastic. But what happened at night? They would come back around the fire, sing songs and eat beans and tell jokes.
Go into town and try to find a lady to be with, right?
Yeah.
For sure. That's exactly what they would do.
Well, is this how like monastic communities work then? Because there's this purpose, this sense of purpose that's associated with it.
They're also together, right? They're also together. But it is one thing that this is more anecdotal. Folks who do go out into the desert to try to live a monastic life often have religious experiences, connections to the divine. They feel a connection to the divine. When you're alone, you imagine beings that are out there to connect with when you're by yourself, I think. Yeah. The monastic life of people connected together is a hard one for people, very, very hard one for people, right? In a way people don't appreciate. People do select into that, but they're also often not typically truly alone. That is not a common way to live. That is not. The common way to live is to live in massive cities with lots of people around.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Hermits are they're
very,
more
very rare exceptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Nick, you wrote that your research had a profound impact on your personal life. When you think about that impact, looking back on that, how did that impact you? And are you happy about that? Was it a good impact on your life?
So nothing I've ever been involved with has changed the way I live my life more than this.
Wow.
I mean, like every aspect of my life, day after day, is different in small ways and in big ways. Small ways, let's just start this morning, right? I'm coming in on the train, sitting across a train car from someone I'd seen a couple days before, but I'd never said hello to, a smaller African-American woman. She had her hat on. I couldn't tell she had her headphones in. If I knew she had her headphones in, I might not have talked. I waved at her first. She was looking at her phone just to say hi, but then she looked at the conductor and I caught her. I just said hello. We started talking, right? We had a lovely 30-minute right. Her name is Susan. She works as a paralegal downtown. I'll see her next Tuesday when she said she'll be back on the train again, right? So,
It's a date.
when I get on the train now, it just feels different. Like I know all these people on the train. It's not like I'm riding with a bunch of strangers.
Yeah.
I've talked to 3/4 of them, it seems. And if I see somebody who I don't know, I can make that dull moment better. I'm walking into the train. I bump into a student of mine who's there with his wife and with two other women who are coming into campus, student and a spouse of another MBA student who's also in my class. Had a lovely little conversation with them. In fact, talked to them about how to connect partners of MBA students to the university a little bit better. That was nice. I get up to my office. I pass an economist down the hall on my hello tour on the way into the office, saying hi to everybody. Her name is Virginia. She's a fabulous young economist that we have here. Say hi to her. A minute or two later, she comes back down my office and she said, "Hey, I just heard about your research the other day. I wanted to tell you about on this other podcast that I was listening to. It was super fascinating. She had some questions for me, right?" So those little things, they enrich my life. And there are lots of those. My plane rides aren't quiet. When I'm feeling something, I'll share it with somebody. My friendships are better because I don't hold back thoughts or beliefs or feelings that I have from other people. My marriage, I think, is better. I'm thinking about how I can make my wife happy or lift her up in certain ways that I might have underestimated before. I don't underestimate them. Sat around breakfast this morning. We have flowers in the middle of the table for my first Monday flowers. My wife loves flowers, and we have a neighbor who has a flower shop, and I ordered routine first Monday of the month we get flowers delivered. She loves it, and all of these things have come from, I think, me recognizing the power I have to engage other people and lift them up in ways I wouldn't have appreciated before. And it becomes such a common thing. It becomes part of your character. I just do things differently. I don't have to think about it anymore. I can talk with anybody, anywhere, anytime. And I don't keep things to myself. I have meaningful conversations and even big things. It has affected. So I do write in the book about a tragedy that hit our family. We lost a baby. Her name was Sophie. 6 months into my wife's pregnancy, at 3 months, we learned that Sophie had Down syndrome. That was the first kind of blow to us. We have 5 children now. We had 4 at the time. We had adopted 2, and so we have had an interesting family journey. But we're three months into pregnancy with Sophie, and we had not thought about having a child with intellectual disability. That's not what enters into your mind. And so that was the first kind of moment. Do we continue with this, or do we do what the doctors assume that we would have done and end the pregnancy? I won't speak for my wife, but I will speak for me. I was nervous. I was very nervous about how this would go. I know from our research, it's hard to tell what it's going to be like to be in a situation you're not in. Would we welcome this little one into our lives and be able to handle it? So we called other parents. These other parents, almost to a person, like they were reading off of some sort of script, said that their child with Down syndrome, who they were worried whether they can handle, had been a total blessing in their lives. They all used the word blessing. Like it was, I so distinctly remember that. They all described their child as a blessing. And then at 6 months, we lost our daughter. She died in utero. And that is the worst thing that's ever happened in our lives without a close comparison. It's horrible. It's the worst thing that happens to a parent. And we sat with that for a long time. After reaching out, we didn't get a chance for her to reach back to us. And we sat with this for 8-9 months, maybe, just kind of mourning this. And one morning I remember this very clearly. My wife was sitting in a chair that she likes in our sunroom. And I went in and I said to her that, I thought about reaching out again. We could do this again. We were prepared to bring a child into the world. We'd adopted before. We could do this again. And I asked her, would you be, we're ready to go as parents again. There are children out there who need parents. We're ready to be parents again. Would you be interested in adopting again? Would you want to consider that? And she as my wife usually is, was already half a mile ahead of me. And she said, actually, I've been speaking with an adoption agency in that would allow us to adopt a child with Down syndrome from China. That was not actually what I was thinking. That was not what I had in mind. And so again, I had to confront this. I had this, these kind of bars in my mind. Can we do this?
Uh-huh.
And to anybody who's not a researcher, it's going to sound weird to think that somehow, like the cold calculus of data, like these bar graphs where I see these gaps between people's beliefs about what it'd be like if I reach out to connect to somebody and what it's actually, to think that consulting that in my mind would change how I behave or anything, it would sound bizarre, crazy. But to me, it gave me some data-driven strength that, look, these fears I have right now are probably off. When you reach out to love another human being, what do they tend to do? They tend to love you back. We already knew that we could do this. We had the research. Raising a child with an intellectual ability is no joke. It's no joke. It's not both hands full. It's both arms full. I mean, it is serious business. Nobody should take this lightly. At the same time, I had a sense that the fears that were making me reluctant to do this when my wife was on board were probably misplaced. And so thinking about our work made me much more open, I don't know that it would have made a difference, in the decision in the end, but it certainly made me feel much more confident that, yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
We can do this. And so we made the decision to go ahead and adopt. We called up the adoption agency the next day, as I recall. I think Jen and I talked about this on a Sunday, if I remember right. And the woman who answered the phone, she said, "Thank you so much for calling. We've been praying for you." I never forget that. And held up a picture. Lindsay needs parents. We called her Lindsay. This young girl needs parents. Would you be up for it? And we were. So, some months later, we're on the plane with the whole family, other 4 kids. They're like a traveling circus, all of us, right, going over. Adopting Lindsay, who is now, I can hold up a little picture of her.
Yeah.
That's her little angel. She's been a blessing.
Oh.
What can you say? Other parents were right. She's been a total blessing. So it has changed the way I live my life, kind of from top to bottom, not just, morning routine coming into the office, but also the structure of our family and the course of our future.
That little bundle of hello, huh?
She's pretty great. I do mention that that she's the most fun person. I see our work exhibited through our daughter, through Lindsay, all the time. She has no filter on her low, Kurt. She always has the energy.
I read
to talk
that.
to
It was
people.
like, oh yeah,
So
hello.
I take her grocery shopping. It's just so fun. Take her grocery shopping, and she walks down the aisle saying hello to everybody, and they just brighten up as if they've just been injected with some kind of substance, right? That they go from kind of this dead face looking for their groceries to just being delighted that this little angel has said hello. Usually have a little, and life is better with her.
It doesn't end. Let me just say that I'm predicting that your experience will be a lifetime of experience, because as the older brother of a Down syndrome man,
is that right?
Yeah. So
I did not know that.
My youngest brother, 10 years younger than me, just came to visit. We moved here to Chapel Hill, and he came to visit, and took him around to see some neighbors, and every neighbor was just delightful, like, of course, warm and everything. Yeah. But Matthew, my youngest brother, is just like the king of the block. Like, I know that you've welcomed me into your home, so I'm here to bring a bright light of happiness. So let's sit down and have a conversation. And it's so he's done this his whole life, and I've seen it with lots of his friends and colleagues as well. So I hope that you and Lindsay have a big hello life for a long time.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I have no doubt about that. And like your family, we in our family, we have it was a very strong marriage. Jen and I have been married for 30 years. Our marriage has never been better than even it is right now. And so we also had we had resources. Raising a child, raising a brother with an intellectual disability is serious. So we don't want to take that lightly. It's not all all hugs and kisses and roses and sunshine. There are challenges, but boy, the fears that I had about it were misplaced. When you reach out to love somebody, they tend to love you back.
Yeah.
And can I just say, it's something that separates this book from a lot of other books that people might read. The authenticity that you bring to the book as a writer, as an author, as just a real human being is just tremendous. And aside from all the science that we just love, we really love that you engaged on such a personal level. So thanks for just being you, Nick, I guess.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Kurt, do you have a
No, you need to go to music.
I do.
I don't know how
I
we
do.
could add any better on the main content than what we just did. So yeah.
You have a lot of lovely musical references in the book. Beatles, Billy Joel, Luke Combs, Daryl Davis, one of my favorites.
Blues musician even,
rhythm and blues guy. Fantastic story. I think he was on Maya Shankar's very first episode of her podcast on A Slight Change of Plans. So I want to encourage anybody to check that out. But I did actually want to just find out if you would be willing to reenact your 25th wedding anniversary song for us right now.
Oh, God. No chance.
Sing it out loud. Let's
no
go.
Chance. I will leave that to Ben Folds. No chance. God, yeah, that was like, so cringy. I still can't. So, Kurt, this is one of these things. Just like it's okay. It's good, right, to talk to somebody else, but you still feel anxiety. I knew that my wife would like this, so to listeners who haven't read the book, for our 25th anniversary, I sang to my wife the Ben Folds song, "The Luckiest," because I thought it encapsulated, in my mind, how I best felt about my wife. It is a beautiful song.
Great tune.
I thought it was like, I think of her whenever I listen to that song. And I like Ben Folds too, but I'm not a good singer. Sing Happy Birthday in front of my class sometimes, but that's a hard one. And I put it to a slideshow with pictures, and even just telling you about it, it hurts to even say it. So no, there's not enough money in the world for me to show you that video.
Okay.
But at the same time, I knew that she would like it, and so I got over that. I got over that.
Yeah.
Pass on. But no, I will not sing it for you now.
Okay. All right. Well, then, if you were stranded on a desert island for a relatively short period, so you wouldn't get too strong of a feeling of isolation, and you had a listening device that could store 2 artists, their entire catalog, but you only get 2 musicians. Which 2 would you choose? And this is not a go to the grave question. This is
I got it. All right, 2. Okay, so one is Matt Kearney, Kearney. I don't know if you guys know Matt. He's in Nashville, Kurt, where you said you were just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
He's a singer-songwriter who we love. In fact, I've carried him over my head at a concert one time.
Whoa!
He does this thing where he crowd surfs at the end. We were up in Wisconsin at a show of his, and I happened to help him move along in the crowd.
Was it
Matt
nothing?
Kearney.
Was it Nothing Left to Lose? What was?
Yeah, that's one of them.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
Yeah, okay.
That's one of his albums. I really like him a lot. I think he's great, and he's got a really good catalog. He's kind of gone through different genres over the years, but a little upbeat. And Lindsay also loves his music.
Yeah.
And so she often asks for the Hey song, which is a song called Count on Me, which she really likes, which is a lovely song. She asked for the Hey song.
Okay.
It has hey in the lyrics. So if you listen to it, so Matt Kearney is one just because I really like. He's our go-to when we're on a long trip. Put in the car to just listen to and enjoy. The other one would be Rufus Wainwright. I think.
Oh yeah.
Rufus Wainwright is just he requires a little more energy to listen to sometimes because he's got a killer voice. It's not always easy listening, but man, is that guy talented.
Can we just clarify? Is it Rufus Rain number 1 or number 3?
Number 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
the third.
The one's still making music now. We saw him at Ravinia, which is a concert venue here on the north side of Chicago, and some musicians, I won't say who, we've experienced live have been worse than their albums.
Yeah.
Rufus Wainwright is talented on his albums, but if you hear him live, holy cow, he is phenomenal. So I also enjoy his music. Very heartfelt, amazingly talented, varied. Those would be the two.
Two singer-songwriters. Interesting. You didn't try to play the variety thing or novelty. You just like, this is what you like, or it's what you're going to take.
You said it was a short enough time, Tim. So you didn't have to like sit there and go, oh, I'm going to be stuck with
I want somebody who's thoughtful, right? And thoughtful and talented, maybe. I don't know. I like them both.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Nick Epley, thank you so much once again for being a guest on Behavioral Grooves.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the next time.
Welcome to our grooving session where Tim and I share ideas on what we learned from our discussion with Nick, have a free-flowing conversation, and groove on whatever else comes into our stranger danger brains.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, there's a part of this, I wonder, and I don't think we have never talked with Nick about this, but we're kind of conditioned from childhood.
Don't talk to strangers.
Don't talk to strangers.
I taught my kids that. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things we learned growing up. Strangers are dangerous. Don't talk to them.
Yeah. And Nick is not advocating that children should take on risky conversations with strangers.
With adults and different things. I think he would say that they should talk to other kids, right? That are their age in various appropriate social situations.
I think so. I think that he would. And I would also suggest believe that Nick is not advocating that we just talk to anybody at any time.
What?
We can still be a bit discerning about this. Like, you're in the airport and you see someone who has the bag from the conference that you were just at. Like, you know that there's a connection there. And you might not have had your bag out to sort of demonstrate that you had an emblem of credibility, but it wouldn't have taken long to
establish that. I could have said, "Hey, I was at the conference. You know, how did it go for you? What did you take away?"
Right.
Would have been a fantastic conversation.
Could have been.
It would have been, probably, right? The research that Nick brings to this indicates that it would most likely have been.
Right. So while we were talking about this before we started recording, I think one of the most interesting things that we might be able to take from this is thinking about having these conversations from a leadership perspective.
Yeah.
If you're a leader in an organization, you're human too. Or
I don't know. I've met some leaders. I don't know if they're really human.
But there's that could be happening. Like, you could be having that. Oh gosh, I don't want to interrupt them. I know that my team's really busy. I don't want to bug them about this, or
it's that.
I think that's going to be problematic.
It's that expectation gap again, and this isn't with strangers. I mean, hopefully, you're a leader, and the people that work for you are not strangers,
right?
However, we do make assumptions, and we then make behavioral choices based upon those assumptions. And those assumptions often are, this will be awkward. They're too busy. They already know this. There's a whole host of different elements that stop leaders from having really important conversations. Or we could reverse this.
Yeah.
And have employees having conversations with their leaders. And I think you find maybe even more components that would inhibit those assumptions that are being made to stop that conversation from happening, to take, as we called in the opening session, that risk of not engaging, right? It's the risk of not reaching out.
This and when you turn the tables, when you just did that lovely switch of it's not just leaders being reluctant to have those vulnerable or authentic conversations with their own employees, but the opposite. And that reminds me of my conversation with Tom Rieger when we was talking about fear, right? Like fear
Boom.
It's a terrible driver. It's a horrible driver of behavior in a lot of these situations because, and I think leaders have the responsibility of setting the tone. It's going to be up to the leader to make themselves credible and vulnerable and authentic and available and compassionately curious. Let's get back to Kwame Christian.
Kwame. But 100%, Tim. 100%. As much as we like to think that employees should have that inner sense that they can come and talk to us as leaders, that they can bring up anything, it is the leader's accountability to making sure that the environment that they've set up, that the team culture that they are creating, that their own behaviors are driving that sense of trust, driving that sense of openness and psychological safety that we've talked about on so many different shows,
right,
for their team, for their employees. And I think that starts with what your initial premise was, is leaders need to get over their own fear of having those conversations.
Beautifully said. And along with that, being willing to get over it, I think that leaders also need to acknowledge that they're going to have this bias. They're going to have this sort of screwed up forecast in their heads, right? That, oh, I can't have that conversation, or they won't respect me. My team won't respect me if I ask this trivial question, or if I want to engage them in this way. You got to get over that because I'm a leader, I have to be a mind reader, I guess.
The way that you talked about that forecast, I love that. It's almost as if there's a weather forecast and there's a 3% chance of rain. Right. So I'm not going to go out today because there's a 3% chance of rain. I'm not going to go and do that activity that I want to do outside.
Yeah.
I'm just going to stay inside. So I'm going to stay silent because there's a 3, 5, 10% chance that I might encounter, I might be awkward. Somebody might be too busy, that somebody doesn't want to have that conversation, and I'm going to make it worse. When in reality, that forecast it's the framing effect, right? It's not 3 to 5% chance of rain. It's 95 to 97% chance that it's sunny and awesome.
Yeah, right. It is framing. And are you also kind of making a pitch for thinking in bets here too?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just how we have come around to that, haven't we?
We have.
We talk about this. We talk about the probabilities of things all the time.
Probabilistic thinking is much better than the on or off. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think this idea that leaders don't engage in these conversations, or maybe even employees, it feels like that's professionalism. It feels right to a certain degree. It's spoken about like, oh, we're being efficient. I'm focused in on the transactions. I'm going to, do this. And oftentimes those conversations that we want to have and need to have aren't necessarily about the business. Those are ones that and this is my own personal opinion, so disagree with me if you think I'm wrong.
You're wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll wait. I'll wait till I hear your. I'll wait till you say something.
You're probably right that I am wrong. But we'll just listen to my thing here. That I think that leaders feel more comfortable about those transactional conversations. It is about the work that's being done. It is about the task at hand. It is when it becomes a personal conversation something that might have to deal with emotions or feelings or some of the softer aspects of teamwork or tension and various different things, that it becomes harder. I don't have research to point out and say, yep, that's it. That's just from me experiencing
there's something
30 years of
intuitive
working
about
with executives.
I would agree with most of what you said because I think that the business environment tends to have a self-fulfilling prophecy of when we're at work, we're going to talk about work, we're going to focus on work. If we're not talking about work, we're not being, again, you mentioned this earlier, efficiency and productivity. And if we're not focused on those things, then why are we wasting our time talking about it? When actually asking, and what I hear you advocating is that the leader having a conversation with the team or with team members about, how do you feel about this? How are you reading the room? How are you, like we talked about that. That's a scary discussion because it's not technically part of the business discussion.
Yeah.
Am I reading that right?
100% right, Mr. Houlihan. I mean, I think it's those small moments that build trust, that build belonging, that build psychological safety, that I'm sharing some vulnerability. Maybe I'm coming at this with some compassionate curiosity, that I'm being authentic about the real me and not the face that I put on at work. And those conversations need to happen for the team to operate at its best.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to a story that Nick told us about how when he started this research and he started engaging people, he began doing it kind of everywhere. Yeah. And of course, he works at the University of Chicago. He's in a building. There's people that work in the building. There might be a security guard at the front door. There might be janitors. There might be, the janitorial crew that's emptying wastebaskets and that kind of thing. And there's professors and students, and he says hi to all of them. And after all these years, God, Kurt, and now I'm thinking, I don't remember when we talked to Nick about this, and we've had so many conversations with him. I don't know if it was actually just recently or not. But he said it takes him a long time to get to his office because he's saying hi to so many people on the way to his office. And
wouldn't that
a
be
great
great
burden to bear, right?
I was just going to say the same thing. What a wonderful reason for being late to your office.
Yeah.
I was having conversations with the, security guard up in front. I was having a long conversation with that student who, always drinks coffee down in the lobby. I was having conversation with that other, assistant professor who I walk by every morning. We build relationships that way. And all of the research, we've had multiple guests on the show, and we've talked about it multiple times. The biggest indicator, the best predictor of a long, healthy life is not how much you exercise or how well you eat. It all focuses in on the social connections that you have. And the broader, larger, more connected, more intimate that those connections are, the better your life is demonstrably in almost every instance.
Yeah. So I noticed when I was at Truist, going into the office back in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I started asking people around me, to tell me about themselves, pulled the Kwame question, being compassionately curious about what their lives were like. It was really cool for me to feel like we were becoming friends. We were developing a relationship in a really healthy way just by having those exchanges. And then that led to interesting volunteer things. Like I remember one woman brought in a handwritten recipe for her margarita recipe. She's like, I'll bet you'd like this. Like, we never talked about margaritas.
No, but she could tell that you definitely liked your alcohol, right? There you go.
She does. And it was just real. I still have that. I have her handwritten, margarita recipe. And it is an ass-kicking good recipe, by the way. It really is. It's pretty fantastic.
Think about that. You got an ass-kicking recipe because you reached out to have a conversation.
Yeah.
With somebody.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You wouldn't have gotten that kick-ass recipe.
And yet it's not amazing at all. It's just being human. It's just being human.
Oh my gosh.
That's all we have to do is just be human. Okay. Kurt, what else? Anything else you'd like to riff on here?
So I think one of the things that you pointed out with this last conversation that Nick talked about, this being late into work all the time because of these, is the fact that he's consistent about this, that he does this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to do this once in a while. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to do this once in a while and to do it more than once in a while if you can, to start building this in as a consistent part of your daily routine.
Like a default.
It's the default that instead of getting in my head and going, I'm too tired. I don't want to talk to this person. I don't want to, they're not going to want to talk to me. That inner dialogue that we all have in those situations, shut that off and just have the damn conversation with the woman who has the Chemex bag that's right there that you're going, we were just at this conference together. Let's share our thoughts about this. And that conversation could have ended in 30 seconds. It could have gone on for 10 minutes. It might have built, maybe she was transferring through in Minneapolis, but she was flying back to Minneapolis. Maybe she lives here. I could have had a friend that I found and maybe gotten a kick-ass margarita recipe.
You could have. Yes. It's entirely possible that you could have wound up with an absolutely fantastic margarita recipe by the end of that conversation. Who knows?
Who knows? Oh. All right.
Okay, Groovers. So thanks for listening. And we just want to remind you of a couple of things here before we go. We have a Substack newsletter that goes out every Monday. And
awesome articles, information. There's a musical, links in there every time.
Every time.
And you can, not only can you get great information, but you can expand your musical collection. Is that what, or
you might.
Yes.
You just might. And this is Kurt's absolute love of his life is the Behavioral Grooves community Facebook page. And it is fantastic because almost every day you've got an interesting groove question out there.
I don't know if it's the love of my life, Tim. I think Aaron might have a different opinion on that, and my kids might, and
they don't mind that you got a mistress in the form of the Facebook community page.
All right, yeah, I do love it, and I think there are a number of fantastic people who are part of that community who consistently, constantly are adding their thoughts and their questions and their insights. And so it's this learning opportunity that we all have of just mostly because we are asking questions. We're asking some deep questions. Sometimes they're fun, sometimes they're light, but oftentimes they're like self-reflection and how you are able to take those and point that mirror back at yourself and go, oh, how do I act? Like one of the questions this past week is, what would you name the chapter of this part of your life?
Yeah. I love that.
Some of the answers are awesome. So, yeah.
truly, just to come up with the title for the chapter of the life of your life. I love that. I think it's fantastic. Also, along those lines, we talk about this stuff because we like the community aspect of it. But I would also say that we like getting likes. Like is a currency for us because we're not getting paid to do this. So, showing up and participating reinforces a lot of stuff for us. And I know that sounds selfish, doesn't it?
Well, no, I was just thinking about how I can pay my mortgage with likes. I was wondering, can I use my, hey guys, I have 32 likes here. Can I get that, burger at McDonald's with 32 likes? 52 likes, maybe it needs 100 likes. That's why we're not getting the currency is likes. I like that. I like it. Yeah. So,
well, I would consider it a non-monetary way of a non-monetary type of currency, but we absolutely relish it and appreciate it when people do. That's the short story.
All right, listeners, groovers out there, we hope that you can take some of Nick's ideas and implement them in your life by talking to strangers or even non-strangers more this week as you go out and find your groove.